My name is Bob Reinsch. I am a Microsoft technical trainer. I'm a Microsoft full-time employee. I've been with Microsoft almost 6 years. It'll be 6 years in February. And just to let you know about my background a little bit, I've been a Microsoft certified trainer since 1995. Came up learning how to code when I was in high school back in the 70s. Became a computer science major when I was at Wichita State. And I was a technical editor, technical writer through much of my career working in Microsoft Xenix, Novell NetWare, and Windows NT. Since my specialties coming up were always some of the client as well as server aspects of it, but I was certified on Microsoft Mail. But that dates myself, right? But before I got certified on Exchange. So I've always had a bit of an interest in document and document management. This is a good cert. It's a fair cert. One of the things that has, some folks are noticing is some of the age on some of the Purview content. It is being updated. But right now, SC-400 is current, and the content that's in the curriculum for this exam is current as well. Before we dive in too far, I want to give you a couple of tips that I think are important relative to this. You'll see probably anywhere from 50 to 60 questions. When I took it, I had 58. So just to kind of lay that groundwork for you. And there's three things that I tell people they want to be able to keep track of relative to Purview and Priva in this content, because this is a theme that I use over and over, because I think it's important that people be able to identify three things on any service or resource that is available in the cloud or basically through Microsoft. You have to find that overview page. That's going to be your table of contents to the product. I've got the overview page open right here. Back over, oops, I guess I went too far. Let's go back. Right, not that. It's one of these, I know it is. But right here, Control-Shift-Tab. Here's the Purview page. I'm going to give you this. A lot of great content on this page to help you. And I can't copy it and paste it into the chat. What is going on? Record. I don't know why it won't let me. It says chat is only available during the meeting, and I'm in the meeting. I don't know why it won't let me do that. Anyway, the Purview page is right here. And this is going to be in my slide deck that you'll all be able to have access to later. It'll also be in the transcript as well. So learn.microsoft.com/ENUS for the US, obviously, and then Purview. And you'll see that this is going to be your big overview on everything available in Purview, which can be a lot. But it's not that bad. My perspective is that if you go through the curriculum, you're going to be in pretty good shape. If you're familiar with the overview page, that's where I'm at right there. But also, a couple of other things that I tell people to keep their eye out for, if they exist. Look for a best practices page, because generally speaking, a lot of the questions are going to come off of best practices as well as frequently asked questions. So those are the three things that I tell people on any topic you want to make sure you have available to you. Let's go ahead and jump on in and talk a little bit more about this side of it, and I'll go back here. And so we're going to talk about SC-400. I want to talk about getting ready for it. One of the things I did with this deck, I made a modification. This was a deck that was designed for trainers, but I think it's applicable here too, because trainers need to be able to pass the certification exam just like anybody else does. So I don't think that's going to be really any kind of conflict. And there are a lot of great links that are in the deck. I've already shared out my deck with Sarah, so that will be posted as part of this chat. And like I said, this is going to be recorded. This is being recorded right now, so it'll be posted back on the learner rooms. a little bit. So a couple of things that you want to be aware of. This is Information Protection and Compliance Administration. This starts getting into mapping your data estate, making sure you can identify all the places where your data is going to be located. But then we have to take some additional steps with that data. We have to make sure that it is properly organized, classified, and labeled, because we are going to be dependent upon those labels and classifications to implement additional policies that will affect the way that data is going to be handled in our space. The course is solid. SC-400. If you look up course SC-400, if I go back over here, and that's right here, and you do a simple search on how about course SC-400? That's what I wanted to get. Course SC-400. This is where you're going to come across the curriculum that we use in our classes. Now, this is Udemy. That's a study guide, but right here, learn.microsoft.com, there you see it, SC-400. We always put this T00A at the end of it for some reason. I'm not quite sure. It's got to be some kind of a catalog reference. But, and actually, I took a look at Peter Reising's session on this. I got to admit, it didn't help me that much. If I was taking a look at a helpful video to help me get over the hump on this, I would be more inclined to take a look at John Saville's stuff on YouTube. Some of you might be familiar with John. So here I've got the course popping up, and I've got that here. I wish I could put it in chat. This is bizarre. I don't know why I can't do that. But if you search on course SC-400, it will steer you towards the course. Like I said, it's a good course. It covers some of the basics about Microsoft 365 and information protection. But then we build out and start getting into data loss prevention policies, managing that data life cycle, as well as taking a look at maybe some bad actors that are mistreating the data. Maybe you've got people doing a little bit of shadow IT, and they're copying files that shouldn't be copied. And then we also need to make sure that that data is not going to walk out the door either. We've got to implement data loss prevention policies to ensure that our most sensitive data can't just be copied wantonly onto somebody else's laptop or onto somebody's thumb drive. Okay, so we got to make sure we stay on top of that part of it. But the course is good. One of the things I recommend for people that I have in attendance in my courses, very often, people that attend my classes might be a little bit like me. I'm ADHD. So I take some additional steps to ensure that I can stay focused on the content while I'm learning. One of the things I will always do is put on noise canceling headphones, and then I use the read aloud option. Another tip I would offer, if English is your second, third, fourth language, there is an option inside the read aloud option in Edge to change and translate the content to a language that you might be more comfortable with. To show you where that is, going back over here to the course, I go right here. This is something I show in every one of my classes just because I want to make sure everybody feels included. And right here, you get into this content, and you get to this first module here. But what I could do, highlight that first word, but right mouse click, and right here, there's a read aloud from here option. Now, you're not going to be able to hear it because it's in my computer and it's not passing through. But that starts going through there. Then over here, I was going pretty fast. Normal listening rate. If you are listening in English and English is a second or third language, you may want to slow it down a little bit. But also note here that you can change the voice and you can translate. So you've got different options, French, variations on languages that are native to, like here, the Galician is it's a Spanish language. Georgian, that's not American Georgian, that's Asian Georgia or Europe Georgia. But you also see some other languages, Hindi in here, as well as Irish. And thankfully, we can also translate Scottish into English as well. So, sorry, I always found that funny when I'm watching soccer, is that I'm watching the Scottish soccer leagues and they always have something to translate what the Scots are saying into English to help me out. So anyway, I hope you find that a little bit helpful when you're studying. Now, one of the things you will see is that this is 100% going to be focused on purview and Priva. So notice that it mentions the purview content right here. We have to worry about data loss prevention. We have to worry about information barriers that might serve as blockers to prevent us from implementing some of the policies we want to worry about. Information protection, making sure everything's properly classified and labeled is going to be important. Privileged access management, making sure that the right people have access to the documents they need to have access to, but also making sure others, it's basically about permissions, but it's also going to be about who has the right to share, who has the right to make copies and things along those lines. Then, of course, auditing. We have to have an audit process to make sure that all of the policies that we have in place are being implemented. And then you have a few other things, communication compliance, making sure people are making sure that we've got policies in place that maybe mask out certain pieces of information or draw attention to certain pieces of information, such as certain policies we may have internal to our company that says, hey, by the way, don't put out people's credit card numbers in an email. And that's where the communication compliance comes into play. Or don't share somebody's bank account number as part of a Teams chat. We can implement that as well. Data has a life cycle to it. So we know at the beginning, it gets created, but what happens with that data over time is that it gets handled by a lot of different people and it changes over time. So one of the things that we can do is manage that life cycle, and we can see how that document, how that data has evolved within our data estate. And then we also have the process of e-discovery, where we can, after we've mapped out all of our data sources, we can then discover where our documents are. And after we have properly discovered that, then we can go and start classifying and labeling the documents. But the beautiful thing about it is that in Purview, we have AI, and over time, AI within Purview will identify the documents and how you've labeled and classified them. Now, notice that there's parts about this that are not going to be covered in the course or the certification exam. The data catalog is not that big of a deal. The data state insights, data map, policy, and data sharing, not really being emphasized. But what I would recommend you do is read on those. It says it doesn't cover that in the course, but I still think it's a really good idea for you to identify some modules that can help you with some of that part. So if I go over here and I go to say Purview Data Catalog, what I would do in that case, I would go back over to learn.microsoft.com, and I put together training modules, indexes for people. I'm currently working on one for myself because I struggle. Yes, I struggle. I struggle with some technologies. It's just a matter of lack of familiarity. I'm not a DBA. So some of the database stuff I've got to dive in a little bit deeper into. But what you can do, let me show you this. If I go here, I could say, maybe I want to learn about KQL, Kusto Query Language. So I look up KQL right here in the search. But remember that here on the left-hand side, I can narrow that down to training. So I can find modules right here, Analyze Monitoring Data with KQL, Data Analysis with KQL. These are all training modules. So I can put together my own regimen of lessons I want to go through. Also keep in mind, when you're on this page, not everybody wants to spend all their time reading. Check out. You can always go to a show. So there's a lot of videos that can help you over that. One of the things that I recognize is that, my mom and dad used the television set as a babysitter when I was growing up back in the 60s. And I don't deny that. I'm 61, So what I have to do is organize how I want to learn stuff. And I go back and forth. I read a little bit, I watch a little bit, I read a little bit, I watch a little bit. But the whole point about this is that all this information is coming into my noggin. Now, I also want to point out something else that can be very helpful as well. So let's say let's go back to learn.microsoft.com. I want to show you something that can also be helpful with your hands-on with Purview. Not everybody has the ability to get their hands on Purview the way they would like to. But you can always do a little bit of like a 30-day trial. But while you're doing that, one of the things that might be helpful is if you get into this part, just go to the regular homepage, learn.microsoft.com. But notice here on the right-hand side, it says Get Certified, Showcase Your Skills. There are a couple of applied skills training modules that you might be interested in, and it's going to help you with your hands-on stuff. So if I scroll down here and I take a look at applied skills, you're going to see that there are a lot of applied skills credentials that we're offering, and they are a credential. You get a badge. You get to post something on LinkedIn to say, hey, look, I did this. But I want you to notice that relative to Purview, we have a couple of these applied skills options. Implement information protection and data loss prevention by using Purview, as well as Microsoft Applied Skills, implement retention, e-discovery, and communication compliance in Microsoft Purview. Now, if you don't have access to sit a 4-day Purview class, these at least introduce some of the lab concepts to you. And one of the beautiful things is that you can go through that. If I open up this one and I scroll down, notice it starts getting into implement information protection, but it covers an introduction, then it covers create, manage sensitive information types, create and configure sensitivity labels, prevent data loss, and then you implement it. Now, what's interesting about this last one, this one walks you through it. So you configure your environment, create a sensitive information type, create and publish a sensitivity label, as well as implement DLP. But when you're done with that, what you'll end up doing is that you'll go and you'll take an assessment. So I go down here. Whoops, let's go back up one more level. But after you go through it, you'll be able to do an assessment and you'll get the credential. I guess they don't have the assessment right there. But prepare for the assessment and take the assessment, check the box, and then start the assessment. Okay. And then you'll get a credential, and then you'll post it on LinkedIn, and I'll be able to give you a virtual pat on the back and say, congratulations, what comes next? This is not for the inexperienced administrator. It is important that you understand a little bit about email, a little bit about the way things are stored, as well as permissions. Notice what it mentions in there about instructors should have experience with Microsoft 365 services. So you got Microsoft 365 apps, Microsoft Exchange Online, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. All of those are, it's good to have a background in those anyway, because what we do with Purview is that we inspect all that content. So it is going to be good to go through that. Also, having a little bit of background in Purview is not a bad idea. I'm sorry, a little bit of PowerShell. That's what I meant to say. Having some background and experience with PowerShell is a good idea as well. We use that quite a bit, especially when we start getting into the way we may want to implement certain policies from the Cloud Shell, or do it from Visual Studio Code, or maybe even from our own terminal session we might have on premises. So what do you want to do? First of all, like I mentioned, go through the curriculum. Course SC-400, go through every line. One of the things that you might try doing, so I get back and I go to the course, right? So administering information protection and compliance in Microsoft 365. So one thing that might be of benefit, when I go through this and I open this up, you're going to see that some of these pages are really long. This one's not, the introductory page, not so bad. But right here, Foundations of Data Security and Compliance with Microsoft Purview. You can tell how long these pages are by taking a look at this over here. That little scroll bar, we've got a lot of content there. But don't be afraid to create your own study guides by generating a summary. Copilot, right here. I'll put that on web. And then ask, can you please generate a summary of this page with key points? And I always, I already put please in. Always say please to the AI. because when they're in charge, I want to make sure they see me as a friend. So we're getting a little bit of a summary there on the right-hand side. Not too bad. But something else that you can do while you're going through this content, some of you might have already experimented with it. Just out of curiosity, Eric, Omar, Christoph, Molly, I hope I said that correct. Maitli, Vasilis, have any of you tried creating your own practice exam questions in Copilot? Just out of curiosity.
Not from my side. I haven't.
Okay. It's something you can do. One of the things that I really, Vasilis, of course, Vasilis. But one of the things that I like to do, and I share this with everybody I have in class, is you can create not only good practice exam questions. Now, the first time I run this, you're going to see it's not that great. Watch. Can you please create 10 multiple choice questions with the answers, multiple choice questions with a single answer. That's important. And include the answers at the end of the question block. That way I don't get the answers right there with the question. And always say please. But what you're going to see is some pretty cheesy questions the first time you run through it. But this is pulling information directly out of this page. And there we go. It started giving me answers, including 175 zettabytes. I was just thinking about zettabytes. But keep in mind, and I should have, there's a couple things I probably should have done. Okay, so this is pulling it from this page. That's good. But you know what I might do? Because I do, it's okay, Omar, but you know what? These questions sure seem to be pretty basic. Can you rewrite the questions and make them more challenging? On a scale of 1 to 5, I would like a challenge level of 3. Let's see what happens. So it's one of those things that you can do. Now, I do this in a couple of different situations. I start working with these, but it's going to go ahead and use that because I set a context to it. I set an expectation. Hey, we've got challenge levels 1 through 5. Give me a 3. So it's going to go ahead and spin those up. But you can do this with different questions. You can do this with multiple choice with a single answer, multiple choice with 1, 2, 3 correct answers. You can do this with true and false questions. I've used this to create Jeopardy games. But there's things you can do to improve and create your own study guides that are going to be a little bit more effective because not everybody wants to shell out, $100 for a measure up exam. So you can create your own. It works okay. And you can do this in other classes too by asking for case studies. One thing that some of you might be challenged by is certain technologies that are new to you. So one of the things that I will regularly do when I come across something that I'm not that familiar with, if it's developer content or database content that I haven't ever worked with, I go in and I say, hey, explain to me how this works, but explain it to me as if I'm a first-year IT intern, and you're going to get a little bit more basic explanation. The other thing that I would point out is that you can come back and do the opposite. Explain this to me as if I'm a seasoned 20-year veteran, and you'll get a more detailed technical answer. Now, what gets interesting is when you start merging the two, because you start off with the basic and then you go to the technical, and all of a sudden that little movement becomes pretty good. So that part of it can help you in creation of your own study guide. So go out to learn, go through all that content. Do what I advised you to do. Don't be afraid to search within learn.microsoft.com, find additional modules on topics. You're going to find that just because there's a course doesn't mean that that's everything that you might want to explore, okay? Um, Another part about this that I would mention, I showed you the location for the applied skills exercises that you can go through. If you have a chance to take the course, you absolutely 100% need to go through all of the labs. That's where you're going to get the hands-on. Now, if you don't have the capability of getting into the labs, what you might try to do, I mentioned the applied skills workshops that are out there. You can also go through esi.microsoft.com if you're a Microsoft Enterprise customer and trying to sign up for the virtual training day on Purview. There's also going to be some other videos that you can take a look at on preparing for the SC-400 exam. So what I've got for you here, this is basically taking a look at what the instructors have for all of their PowerPoint slide decks. Now, this deck is going to be shared, but I also want you to notice that this starts getting into the various sections that you can see in the course. It says whether the content is existing, but all of these links are hot. So this is starting to get into the lab environment. Here we start. This is so tiny. I apologize. But then we have another one for getting into information compliance, information types. And there's also here on the right-hand side, I love this, additional video resources. So for those of you that prefer to watch a video, there you're going to have a video that you can get into. Go ahead and make a little popcorn, kick back, fire up YouTube, and there you go. All right. So yeah, all those video resources are going to be there. Some of these are going to be on YouTube. Many of them are going to be hosted on Microsoft's available pages. What you may have to do is rather than fire up YouTube on your TV set, you may have to cast from your laptop to your TV set to watch some of these as well. But it covers all of the territory. But if you go through the learn content, go through the lab, and then maybe take a look at the video, you ought to be in pretty good shape. We also get more into working with data loss prevention. So here we start getting about implementing it, preventing it, configuring it, and managing it. And you've got these different contents. Once again, learn links. They're hard to see. I apologize, but they are going to be available to you in the deck afterwards. Then you've got the labs that you can go through, then additional video resources. Now, one thing I would point out, if you don't have access to one of our lab hosting companies, the lab instructions are going to be available to you if you want to get to them. If you go out to HTTPS, here, I'll write it down. You can do this over here. I got a whiteboard. Use it. So what you want to do, HTTPS, aka.ms, then after that slash, put in SC-400 labs. In fact, do that right now if you can. aka.ms SC-400 labs. MCT should access to the scalable labs to practice the labs before delivery. Yes. Well, yeah, you ought to be okay, Vasilis. You should be fine. Vasilis is a teammate. So, but yeah, what you may want to do, go through the labs. That will either help you with you can set up the labs on your own. It does give you a little bit of information on how you can deploy it. It's a little bit of a challenge, but it can be done. And the other thing is that this walks you through all of the steps that you're going to see in those labs. So if you have your own subscription or you have your own trial that you can work with, you ought to be able to get through all of the labs within a 30-day subscription, with a 30-day trial without too much of a problem. This one's getting a little bit more. Oh yeah, that's community. That's okay, Vasile. It's cool. It's all of the lab instructions are hosted on GitHub. Anybody can get to those. So one of the things I do try to point out are the content that's readily available for everybody. Here we start seeing a little bit more about some learn links having to do with life cycle and records management. You can manage the data lifecycle in Purview, and then you can also manage the data retention workloads as well. And once again, you've got learn links and there are labs. These don't have any additional videos that I know of, but You might come across those, but once again, the labs are going to be posted in there. And these are all going to be hosted on GitHub. These links that you'll be able to access in the deck will take you directly out to those lab instructions. We also get into a little bit about using and investigating things that happen in Purview. So right here, we cover monitoring, investigating, exploring compliance, making sure people are remaining compliant with the policies we have in place. We're going to search for content, but we can also do e-discovery. We can take a look at premium e-discovery because there is a little bit of a difference here in the licensing from standard going to premium. And then there's also auditing content as well. Once again, feel free to go through all those, familiarize yourself with those, create your own practice exam questions. And if you come across any of these modules or alternative modules that might be on learn.microsoft.com that have their own sandbox, check out those sandboxes because they'll give you a chance to get some hands-on. This, I believe, is the last one. This starts getting into, insider and privacy risk. We do have content we want to get into about managing privacy risk, remaining compliant, watching out for what the insiders are doing. We got to worry about, okay, thanks, Christoph, for letting me know. Oh, chat's back. Wait, this is chat's only available during meeting, but I don't have it. You guys can chat and I can't. That's bizarre. I can't. Okay, I guess I'll improvise. I'll come up with something and somebody else can write it into chat. But I've got a link to a study guide for you. I know, Molly. I mean, what's up? It must be Friday before a holiday break, right? Anyway, yeah, you can go through and take a look at insider risk, information barriers that you might encounter. You can try and reduce some of those with adaptive protection. And then you can also work with regulatory and privacy requirements. A couple of other things that you might want to grab. I'm going to do this for you. I can't Win Shift S. Guys, do a screen cap on this if you want to. That could be helpful. So yeah, I'll post this and leave this here. There's a practice exam question, practice assessment out there, but like I said, you can create your own. That study guide is what I used to create this deck. So that study guide that's listed there will have all of the links in it. So you've got a certification guide, you've got a study guide, and then you also have a practice exam, and you can create your own practice exam. One of the things that I would point out about this one, get a good night's sleep beforehand, breathe, and keep in mind that all of the Microsoft certification exams at this level today allow you to have access to Microsoft Learn. So on the left-hand side, when you're taking the certification exam, yeah, Vasilis, your mission if you choose to accept it. All right. So anyway, but what was I saying? Now I lost track of what I was saying. Yeah. So with that learn option, heads up. In previous exams, I've been a little bit reluctant to use that learn button on the left-hand side because, as I shared with you, I'm ADHD. And if I go out to a website, that could be a rabbit hole for me. I can start chasing bunnies all around the internet. The last time I took a certification exam, I hit a speed bump. I hit one that I wasn't quite sure about. So I went and I checked out learn.microsoft.com using that left-hand button. I tell you what, I was a fool for not using it before. So having that available can make a difference. I believe that having that learn button on the left-hand side was probably the reason why I passed my last certification exam. So it's there. It can be used, but once again, it goes back to with great power comes great responsibility. Use your powers for good. Keep an eye on that clock because when you go through this, you're going to find that that clock can move quick. So, oh yeah, Eric, good point. Yeah, Eric pointed out that right now, I believe is it for January or is it right now? They're doing a free retake. Yeah, fantastic
it's
news.
you gotta sit. Yeah, you gotta sit for it in December.
Okay. Sit the first one in December, though, right?
Correct. And then you'll get can do the retake from January through April.
Okay, but I want to give you a heads up. If you're trying to get this one in before the end of the year, you're probably going to have to go to a testing center. I signed up. I've got another certification exam over the break. And with end of year stuff, everybody that needs to be certified professionally has signed up for Pearson VUE to take exams at home. So if you take an exam, you might have to go into a training center. The only options that were available for me to take exams when I signed up for it, because I live out in the country, was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So watch out for that. It's great. I'm glad they're doing that, but it's also kind of hard to get in for an at-home exam right now. So you may have to go to a testing center. But thanks for the heads up on that. I'm going to give you a moment to grab these as well. So there's the SC-400 certification path. I showed you that the course SC-400 is how you can get there, but there's a shortcut for that as well. And then the SC-400 labs will take you out to GitHub where you can take a look at those labs if you want to have an offline access to them. If you've taken SC-400 or you have access to practice environments, hosted labs, they work pretty well. I went through our hosting partner, which is Skillable, also known as Learn on Demand, and I was pretty pleased with the experience I had there. So that works out pretty well. I'm going to pause here, let you guys do a screen cap on that. Shift S. I can't share. That's weird. Couple more minutes here, then I'm going to have to call it and get to another meeting. But I invite you all to connect with me. Please do. You got my email address right there, robert.reinsch@microsoft.com. If you want to right mouse click on my icon and open up a Teams chat with me that's private just between the two of us, that's cool. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn, because when you pass, I want to hear about it. I want to give you a pat on the back and then ask you that ubiquitous question that everybody loves. Great job. What comes next? But that's what I've got for you folks. Thanks. If you had any questions, we got a few minutes, but I'm going to have to leave it about 5. Those labs are sufficient for 4. So normally, what happens in those courses is that we do lecture and lab. So we will talk about what the content gets into as part of the course, and then we have structured lab time in the afternoons. Sometimes we do the labs, module lab, module lab, module lab. Some courses are set up so that we do module, then open it up for labs in the afternoon, which I sometimes have a preference for when I have an international crowd, because I know that there's folks over on India Standard Time that are taking classes till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I want them to be able to get some sleep. But they're pretty good. And the John Saville content, something that you might want to check out if some of you might be familiar with John's work. But if I look up John Saville, SC-400, you go to John's channel, and there's John. Yeah, we go to the same barber. We don't necessarily go to the same gym, but you should be subscribing to John's channel because his content's great. Azure updates, SC-900, Azure API management. I'm going to look at that one. That's one I missed. I need to look at that. But there's some other great courses out here. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Simin, for sharing that. I appreciate it. That's most appreciated. Okay, so thanks, folks. If when this pops up in the learning room, feel free to add your comments, shoot your questions, comments to me personally. I certainly welcome you. And we will talk with you all down the road. Next month, I'm planning on doing another session, primarily for trainers, but we want to talk about using Copilot in the classroom. So that's my plan for next month. Hey, thanks, folks.